go. I got it. Good evening. I need my gavel. Hello, hello. Are we on? I should have brought my gavel. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I should have brought my gavel down to committee, but the Senate and House Judiciary Conference Committee on Senate Bill 286 will come to order. We had an offer from the House that amended Section 5 and Section 1. The amendment on Section 1 was adding to Section 1A2 language that was shared on March 29th, and it is with the intent to prevent such employee from freely moving to a different location or to provide care for another person. And that was the House position last we met, and the Senate was, again, glad to see the House moving towards the Senate position, and we took a recess and adjourned to have Senate leadership review the language, which Senate leadership did, and Senate leadership, and therefore this committee then accepts the offer, and I'm not sure we have an agreement. We might have an agree to disagree, but I will let others speak on that. Who wants to go next? Yes, Senator Corson.
Yeah, I'm not going to be. I'm going to need an agree to disagree, just because I don't think that I'm upset that the immunity provisions were broadened beyond what was already agreed upon last year by all the different parties, and would have liked to see that language continue to be what was agreed upon by everybody in both chambers, the governor's office, and all the respective parties. So that's my reason for needing the agree to disagree.
And thank you. I want to bring up one thing before we continue this conversation. We are at March 31st, 2022, and do we need to add language to the House position to ensure that this gets in the register in time to continue forward as intended? And that would be a question for the reviser as well.
Well, so Madam Chair, our goal on the House side is if we can get through the agree to disagree and come back to agree something, we're going to stay and run this tonight to at least get it passed. I know there's some provisions in here that indicate that the provisions apply retroactively between March 12th, 2020 and January 20th, 2023. So even if they expire, we're certainly putting them back in place and attempting to cover the lapse in time.
And if the riser is satisfied that that's what the language as written does, then I don't believe we would need additional language.
Madam Chair, there were two provisions that provided that they applied back to March 12th, 2020 and prior to March 31st, or prior to March 31st of 2022. We're attempting to cover the range there because we're extending it back out to January. So, that would just depend on your comfort level as to whether you think that we're capturing those claims. As for with respect to the business immunity provisions and the other ones, those sections actually expire on March 31st of 2021. So
of 2022
or of 2022, sorry. So should this bill not become law, which would require, you all to pass it, the governor to sign it, and it to be printed in the register before midnight, then those sections would expire, in which case we would draft it a little bit differently if that were to happen. But if everything were to happen before midnight, then I don't think that we would change any drafting.
I think given the lateness of the hour, it's almost 9 p.m. on March 31st, 2022, that we would need that language drafted for the retroactivity or to bridge the gap there for our business community. Do we have agreement from the House?
Madam Chair, I was just pausing to see if that was an offer, a part of an agreement already. We're just trying to do whatever you need us to do, so.
If that's something you think you can come up with, I guess that would be a question for me. I mean, we're still going to have the lapse, right? Even if we attempt to, yeah, we're going to attempt to cover it, but it's still going to be there.
Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, yes, I mean, it happens. And so the response, we can write it. We've obviously thought about this. It wasn't, a novel, it wasn't a new idea. We saw this maybe coming. So we'll give you the language that we think gives you your best argument. And that's kind of what we did with the retroactivity to begin with, right? We give you the best argument that it's retroactive, and then you can litigate it. So that's where we'd be. But we can do it, especially if you're running an agree to disagree. That buys us time, so.
And it would be the intent of the legislature that the language covers the gap. And with that, then, we have a comment from Representative Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we go to the matter of whether or not I will be able to sign this report, I do want to address the subject of retroactivity. I suspect all of the lawyers in this room are well familiar with the limitations on attempts to divest substantive vested rights through retroactive legislation. That attempt is being made here in the context of extending immunity that would vitiate vested rights of parties. I do not believe that the language, no matter how well drafted, will be effective. Now, were I in your shoes, I would certainly want the revisers to use their best efforts. But, there are just some things the legislature can't do, no matter how important we think we may be. So I would like to, at the appropriate time, address the matter as to whether or not I can sign this report.
Other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, speaking on, I guess, behalf of the House, or at least my position, and Representative Ralph's, that we are willing to accept an offer that includes the retroactivity language that Jason and Natalie come up with.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Representative.
I presume that's Representative Carmichael you're recognizing rather than one of my learned colleagues.
Yes, the one with his hand up.
Thank you. I had really wanted to be able to sign this report because I think that the parts that I found most objectionable were in fact passed by the House of Representatives, with only 17 of us having the wisdom to vote no. However, despite my friend the chairman's good efforts in what I think he believes was a narrowing of the immunity that might be granted, over the past 2 or 3 hours, multiple lawyers who practice in the field of medical negligence have had an opportunity to review the proposed language. And as I'm sure we all know, our subjective or even expressed intent does not countermand the black letter of the law. I am not expert enough to explain to you the reasons why lawyers who practice in this field regularly have expressed the opinion to me that this actually expands the extent of the immunity, and some even believe that by arguably narrowing the immunity with respect to arguably narrowing the immunity. The inference is an intention to broaden the rest of the immunity. Some are even of the opinion that during the pendency of this act, should it be signed by the governor, that it may be impossible to bring a medical negligence action against anyone for anything. Accordingly, I'm going to have to defer to their expertise and go to the agree to disagree procedure. I do not do that lightly. We very, very seldom do that in judiciary. But sadly, I'm going to have to do it twice on the same day. And I just want everyone to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a House bill that was brought to the Senate, and we have worked on this diligently for the last couple of days, and it is been looked at by House and Senate leadership, and appreciate the work of everyone involved there. And again, this was brought to us by the House, and we have a conference committee to work on and to advance this with our House and Senate leadership, and we have done that. So are there other comments or questions? Yes, Representative Ralph.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for purposes of, since again, we're dealing with circumstances now where what we do in these committees and many times is going to be captured forever on YouTube or on video, I just wanted to make the comment that I would agree with fellow representative that, in fact, maybe there are occasions where our intent may not govern over the actual black and white words. I do want to make clear that the intent within this committee, I believe, is not that we would ever be providing immunity for all claims of medical negligence over the last 10 months. And so for whatever that's worth, I want to make sure that that's clear in the record, and for the legislative intent that at no time would we ever be intending to preclude any and all medical negligence claims during the pendency or during the time that this particular language would be in place should it be passed and signed. In the upcoming 10 months, yes, thank you. Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, we need to run to go vote, so can we agree to disagree and get that going?
Sure. Thank you. We will be in recess until we come back. This is to announce that the committee is going to be adjourned until further notice. We will be calling another conference committee shortly. Thank you.